Okay, today we're going to look at the influences of the concept of humanism and the influence of Greco-Roman art and architecture coming back to Europe and that kind of learning. And after this video today, you're going to examine humanism and art, and then you're going to also begin an art analysis web quest. So humanism reading in art. So when one of the great movements of the scholars, that the new learning that occurs during the Renaissance, is we talked about this idea far left that it's a period of rebirth, and that's what the term Renaissance from the French means. And what is being reborn is really the glory of the age of the Greco-Roman world. But within a few hundred years, Europe is going to begin to surpass that glory of Greece and Rome. As these new ideas of Greece and Rome were returning, people wanted to try to recapture that. And that is something that's been part of the culture for a really, really long time. They've been surrounded by ruins throughout the Middle Ages. There was the sense that there was a glorious age in the past that needed to be returned. And as learning is coming back, people are beginning to get the skills to actually make that happen. Architects are beginning to make the skills to make that happen. Artists are going to be able to do that. But maybe really importantly is going to be philosophers. So we're going to talk about this achievement of bringing back Greece and Rome. And part of the achievement is going to be linked to this concept we're going to read about today called humanism. Humanism is a movement that is secular in nature. And that's what the key difference between them and the scholastics are. Scholastics in the Middle Ages always referred to the Bible as an authoritative text. The scholastics are not atheists. They still are very religious. The humanists. But the humanists decide to focus on this world, the secular, and they don't really deal so much with religion, because that's what the Greeks and Romans did. They dealt with this world, and they really glorify human achievement. They want to achieve on this world, and they want to recreate Greece and Rome, and they want to study the Greco-Romans who are non-Christian as sources of truth and knowledge on their own. And, this is able to happen because of the sources and the learning that has come back from the Middle East and come to Italy first. And they're combining that with their knowledge of the ruins that have surrounded them, and they're able to see this. So this is a famous painting from the Sistine Chapel, the ceiling of the Sistine Chapel, painted by Michelangelo in the Vatican. And in the center here is probably the most famous panel of the Sistine Chapel, is the creation of man. The idea here is we see humanism in the art. We're seeing a return to Greco-Roman art, realism, perspective, real anatomy. We're also seeing the nude return. And that's really important because nudes in art hasn't been used since the Greco-Roman world. Because the triumph of Christianity and Christian theology said that the body was a source of sin and nakedness, i.e. Adam and Eve, is something that should be covered up because that is sin. What humanists are trying to say, like Michelangelo, is that being a person, being a human being, is not necessarily a sin. And humans are, in and of itself, our existence is something that is beautiful, that is able to on this earth, we're able to accomplish great things. And so here is the creation of man. But new scholars have looked at this idea and re-examined it. When the Sistine Chapel was being restored, some art historians noticed some similarities between God and the angels accompanying him to the cross-section of the human brain. This is a really interesting theory that goes along with this, because we know that in order to create good anatomy, the artists of the Renaissance had been breaking with church law and had been dissecting bodies to understand vascularity, muscular structure, skeletal structure. And it's very possible that Michelangelo had been exposed to the cross-section of the brain. And what he was sneaking into this picture is a humanist message on a church that in reality was not caught by anybody else at the time. So it was almost like an Easter egg, if you will. And so this is rather not about, and if this theory is true, this is rather not about Michelangelo saying Adam or man is being created, but rather God is bestowing him with knowledge himself. And this reorients the idea that man is master of his own domain and has the knowledge that it may be divine, but has a knowledge and capability to achieve great things on this earth. And that should be celebrated and that should be encouraged, rather than worrying about, the next life in heaven. For the humanists, that held society back from reaching that Greco-Roman age. And we can see the influence here in art, for instance, between Byzantine style of medieval art and the return of realism and perspective and glorification of the human being. So keep in mind, Byzantine art was twofold. It was created partly because after the fall of Rome, there was a loss of the knowledge of how to create great works of Greco-Roman art, but also the influence of Christianity that didn't want the glorification of the human being to distract from the message, and the realism to distract from a message. And so you get very flat, two-dimensional, unrealistic things. But here is the recapture of the art and the glory of the human that was so important in the Greco-Roman world. Realism, perspective, detail, and even the humanist message of the nude, which is coming back from Greece and Rome, but also has the message that humans are capable of great achievement, and human being in and of itself is not something to be ashamed of. We see this here again in probably the most famous statue of the Renaissance, Michelangelo's David. Is a freestanding nude sculpture. We can compare it to some of the freestanding nude sculptures of the Greco-Roman age. And the Greeks had a similar view of human beings, that human existence on earth and is a thing of beauty and should be glorified. But it was even more powerful message for the Renaissance artists to go with the freestanding nude, because they were not only saying the same message as the Greeks, but they were attacking message in cultural ideas that had lived throughout the Middle Ages, and the power of religious ideas that our existence in and of itself is a sin, and that humans are only capable of sin and should focus on their salvation in the next life. The humanists are saying, no, we need to focus on the successes that we can do in this life, and the next life will work them out. And humans are capable of great glorification. To throw back that influence of Greco-Roman arts and messaging is also seen in architecture as well. The bringing back of the columns, as we can see here, the dome, trying to copy Greece and Rome. So this age really is about, for intellectuals and artists, it's really about recreating Greece and Rome in the Italian Renaissance. The Northern Renaissance outside Italy is going to be different, but in the Italian Renaissance, the heavy messages, we will try to bring back the glory of Rome. And at this time period, by the time we're in the 1400s, in the 15th century, they are starting to do that. So, I don't know what happened to the slide here, but this idea of humanism is that humans are not necessarily bad. I'm going to summarize it real simple, and we're going to read about it in more detail in the reading. They're capable of achievement, and that achievement should be celebrated. And they should worry about the here and now, rather than constantly worry about religion and worrying about salvation and getting into heaven. So they're secular. That is an important term. It's not that they are non-religious as individuals, but their studies are non-religious. They worry about the here and now, the observable world, what human achievement is capable of, and trying to reach that pinnacle of human achievement. And then once it's reached, to celebrate it. So therefore, humanist studies were designed to study all sorts of elements of human culture and human civilization that we could learn from the achievements and writings of people. And so humanist studies include history, and they include studying philosophy, as well as art and architecture, and studying the great works of the Greco-Roman world, without worrying about whether they're in contradiction or not with interpretations of the Bible. The idea of being a good humanist scholar is going to lead us to this idea of the Renaissance man, that the true humanist scholar in the Renaissance was someone who tried to master all studies. And the big focus is going to be on the classics of Greece and Rome. That knowledge, if we want to create that great age, we should go back to the knowledge of that age. And so humanists reject what the scholastics were doing. The scholastics were using evidence in an argument, but they went back to Greco-Roman texts, especially Aristotle, but they always included the Bible, and the Bible was the final authority. Humanists essentially are going back and studying for truth outside of that. So in a minute, we'll continue. We'll finish up this video, and then tomorrow we'll be talking about famous artists of the high Renaissance in Italy.